Welcome to the One Mission TV series, Healing Conversations. I'm your host, Ashley Hasiotis. Chances are, if you found your way to this TV series, you're on a healing journey. And whether you went through something traumatic or you witnessed something traumatic, my hope is that the people that I interview during this TV series helps you as you continue on your healing journey. As always, One Mission and I am here for you. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome back to One Mission TV in our Healing Conversation series. I am your host, Ashley Hasiotis. Today, we are continuing our topic of the financial toxicity of pediatric cancer and all that is encompassed in that burden of having a critically ill child. And today, I have my friend Chris Mingace, and he is from HBMH Law. Chris and I have known each other for, I don't even know, 5 or 6 years at this point. And he is an attorney. He's been an attorney for over 25 years, if I'm figuring that out. And he's going to talk to us a little bit today about, this whole concept of, should I file bankruptcy? Should I not file bankruptcy? And this is a real struggle for those of us who don't know, but for those of us who are watching, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that you're not alone, that the most common issue that all of us that have children with cancer face is 2 things. 1, divorce, and 3, bankruptcy. 2, bankruptcy, not 3. So we're going to talk about that today. So welcome, Chris, and I'm so happy to have you with us.
Well, good morning, Ashley. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to trying to answer some questions for you folks about the financial struggles, obviously, of having a sick child and the overwhelming medical bills I'm sure that they're suffering from.
Exactly. So why don't we start by, can you give us a little background on you? Tell us, like your journey and what your firm does and all that fun stuff.
So that's a fun part. That's easy for me. So, I'm a local person. I went to Framingham State College, graduated cum laude from with an economics, business, finance degree, and always loved the financial end of the world. And I found that I also was interested in the law. So I wound up going into Suffolk University Law School, where I graduated in 1990, and I have been practicing as a lawyer in the Framingham, Boston community ever since. And most recently, about 7 years ago, we joined with another firm. My partner, Michael Heineman, and I were together since 1996 in Framingham, where we had bought a piece of property on Union Ave.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the great Union Ave. And so our new firm is HBMH Law, which is Heinlein, Beeler, Mingace, and Heineman. And we practice in the areas of primarily 80% of it is the personal injury, medical malpractice, a lot of litigation issues. And I have always concentrated on the financial end of the world, helping new businesses get started, help people get through their financial circumstances. Sometimes, unfortunately, that winds up in bankruptcy, but I don't see it necessarily as unfortunately, because folks that find themselves in a financial dilemma, and there's a lot of mental anguish that comes with that. And, fortunately, what we are going to talk about today is the benefits of bankruptcy, in as much as there's a stigma to it or what have you, but more benefits, quite frankly, for the people that need it. So
Cool.
our business helps with, wills, trusts, business creations, and a tremendous amount of litigation. And at one time we did a tremendous number of bankruptcies. And so that's me, and that's.
Wow, I can see all the work behind you, so it looks like you're very busy. I'm happy to be doing this talk with you. So yes, you're right, and that's the thing. You were talking about medical bills. So the reality for our clients and our patients really is that your child gets diagnosed, you're in the weeds of being in the hospital. You never say no to any test. When somebody at 2 a.m. says, hey, we got to go downstairs and do a CAT scan because we don't know what's going on. You don't say like, oh, let me call my insurance company first and see if that's going to get approved. You just say, yes, take my kid downstairs. And so there's this, what we call the shoebox effect in the world of cancer, really, and specifically pediatric cancer. You just take all the bills and you just put them in a shoebox, and you're thinking to yourself, like, I don't even care. I don't even want to deal with this. I just don't care. I'll deal with it later. And then later comes. And later is, if you're lucky enough to be done with treatment, then you go, oh man, I got all those bills I got to deal with. So, and when you lay them out on the kitchen table, sometimes you find that you literally don't have the money to be able to pay for the bills. And then the question is, which we talked about in our first part of this video series, is, and you touched upon it, the emotional turmoil of, oh my gosh, we have to file bankruptcy, and the stigma attached to that. We talked a lot about that with Adam Bortolucci, and which was great to be able to hear his family story. And also, then, like, once you kind of, if you were lucky enough to get over that emotional trauma of being able to say to yourself and in your family, like, okay, we have to file bankruptcy. Some people don't even know what the right steps are. And sometimes they make bad decisions that are not good for them in the long run. So tell us a little bit about what it means to file bankruptcy, just the ins and outs of it, the benefits, the downsides, info dump on us for that.
So obviously that's a great question, because a lot of folks find themselves in the circumstances you present when they reach us at our office. And the biggest mistake that we find folks are making when they're trying to make a decision, should I file bankruptcy or not file bankruptcy, is they've gone to a credit counseling person.
Yes.
Credit counseling happens to be not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be real reticent about taking that journey, because it is a commitment and oftentimes winds up in failure and turns into a bankruptcy down the road. There's a saying in bankruptcy that you don't throw good money after bad. You don't pay this credit bureau or credit agency who says they're going to help you get out of debt,
Right.
cost you an awful lot of money to do it. And then at the end of the day, you wind up failing anyway, and you wind up being in the very position that you should have started at. And that was, let's evaluate, what are our circumstances?
Mm-hmm.
And everybody comes in with different circumstances. And there's a number of questions that that bankruptcy attorneys will ask to figure out, are you a candidate for bankruptcy? Is this your best decision? And so before a family goes down that road, first they want to say, okay, let's get organized. What do I really have for debt?
Mm-hmm.
Is this so much debt that I'm never going to be able to take care of it? And if you're in that situation, you then step up with the attorney, and they'll say, okay, well, let's look at all your debt. Is any of it secured? Is any of it unsecured? If it's all medical bills, okay, that's, we're going to work with that.
Mm-hmm.
You want to, they'll ask you, do you own a home? How do you own that home? Do you have a homestead on your home? Most everyone, if they don't have a homestead, there's an automatic homestead provided by statute, but you have the election for very short money. You can file your own homestead that'll protect up to $500,000 of equity against anyone ever getting any, forcing you out of your house.
Wow. I never knew that.
Yeah, that protection is important. It's almost like an insurance policy, but it protects you for $500,000, and it's less than $100 to file it and record it with the
Oh.
local registry. Most folks, when they buy a house and take out a mortgage, real estate attorneys are looking to make sure that there is a homestead on there. So you may have it, you don't know it, but if you don't have it, you should certainly get one.
Okay.
That becomes a crucial part of filing your bankruptcy, on whether you're going to make federal elections for exemptions or state election for exemptions. So that would be the first place you run. And then you should also run your credit report. A lot of people don't do that, because when you file bankruptcy, you
Mm.
want to make sure that you've listed everyone that is a potential creditor.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have creditors that you've forgotten about, or maybe misidentifying you as a potential debtor of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure when you're talking to the attorney, he has as much information about your debt as your assets. And you want to have as much information about your debt. And the
Mm-hmm.
best place to start with that is run your credit report, because the shoebox process, although it works, is probably not going to capture everything that you might need. And debt sometimes transfers, right? So it starts with one creditor, and if bills aren't being paid, those debts can be bought by a second creditor who buys a bunch of debt. And so you want to make sure that when you're identifying your creditors, you identify them properly. You want to make sure that you're keeping your mortgage current. So, I tell everyone that when you file bankruptcy, it's a timing thing. If it is going to be an inevitable thing, you want to make sure you're doing it at the right time. So
Mhm.
if you're struggling through the process of your child treating, and you're not at an end result with your child, and you're going to be out of work for a period of time, so your income stream has been reduced,
Yeah.
you don't want to file bankruptcy at that point.
Oh,
You really want to kind of get to the end of that cycle, right? When you're ready to launch, when you're ready to go back to work, you feel like most of the bills are behind you. That's the timing aspect of filing bankruptcy, because it's going to give you a clean slate, right?
I have a question. Let me pause you there.
Yeah.
So, well, what if they literally don't have the money? So, like, why is waiting better than like making it worse?
Well, waiting allows you to capture all your bills, because if you're not ready to launch, you're not ready to get to the next place, they can file suit against you. They can get judgments against you. But if you don't have the money to give them, then there's really not much they can do to you.
Okay.
You're looking to get your slate clean, but it's not just an emotional response to the bills, right? Of course, there's a lot of emotion attached to getting these Dunning calls and getting the Dunning letters, and it's a little bit of a struggle. But your concentration while your child is treating is your child,
Yeah.
and that's where your focus should be.
So you just ignore everything.
You need to ignore it. You
Yeah.
need to ignore it for the period of time in which you decide, okay, I'm now ready to move forward.
Okay.
Okay. And that's an important timing aspect of filing bankruptcy that some folks forget. And most attorneys are good about informing you of this timing aspect. But there are others that are mills and will just take you in and process you through. And at the end of the day, you're done with bankruptcy. You've released yourself of all that debt, but you step right back into incurring more debt as care continues.
Right. Okay,
Right?
that makes sense. Okay.
So I always tell folks, are you bringing in income? Are you going to be able to pay your bills when we're done with this? That's
Yeah.
the most important part, that you're coming through the tunnel of bankruptcy into the gardens of success, in other words, as a
Mhm.
visual. So,
I got it. It was cool. I like.
all right. I don't want to just talk, as you would imagine, I can probably talk forever, but
Yeah, no, that was good. I think the first one that I took away from, because I remember my mother did bankruptcy when I was, I think, in high school. I don't know if she went through credit counseling, but one of my college roommates did, and it was a nightmare for her, and then it never even worked. So the credit counseling, first step. Second step, make sure you have a homestead. Third step is timing.
right,
Make sure that you're choosing the right time. So if you're in the middle of, treatment, maybe not the right time. If you're out of work, maybe not the right time. Let all of that debt pile up, really,
right.
and just try to like let it be. Then when treatment's over and you can get back to work, then is the time to file bankruptcy, because you'll wipe all of that burden really away, and you'll have money and income into for this fresh start, as you said.
That's right. And the importance of that is there's some things you're going to do concurrently with that. And that is, your money is going to be needed to keep your mortgage up, right?
Mhm.
You don't want to lose your house. Pay your mortgage, pay your utilities if you can, you know, pay if you want to keep your car post bankruptcy, pay your car loan. Because if you're paying those assets, those are ones you're going to need post judgment
Right.
with bankruptcy. So it's important that not only are you're compiling debt, but you're keeping those things current that you absolutely need, and that is your mortgage, because you need a roof to live in.
Right.
And you got to pay your utilities, and you got to pay your because you don't want them to get shut off,
Right.
and perhaps your insurance, because in order to keep the mortgage current, you need to have your home insurance current. So there's some very simple things that you can do to help yourself out while you're waiting to file bankruptcy.
Mhm. I have a question. When you file a bankruptcy, what happens to your credit score? Like, does it just go to zero and you start over?
So, a lot is placed on the credit score, and it's important, obviously, coming out of bankruptcy. What is my credit score going to be? There's no guarantee. There's so many things that go in to your credit score, and not just, your debt or your payments. They look at a lot of other variables. And it
Like
could
your
be
income to how much you
income
potentially
to debt
owe.
ratio, and what do you have assets? So, um, but your credit score will go down, as
Yeah.
you'd expect it would. But there are ways to bring it back up. And those ways to bring it back up start with, you know, pay your bills on time.
Mhm.
That's the first thing you can do that will help bolster that credit score and help it go up. You're going to find that you're going to get offers for credit cards. This is a blessing, but also a trap. You got to be careful about the ones you choose, because now that you no longer can file bankruptcy again, the credit cards see you as a good risk because you have to pay it, because you can't bankrupt that debt out. So if you're going to step back into the world of credit card, revolving credit, or what have you, make sure you do it with caution. Make sure you do it within your budget.
Yeah.
Make sure there's a small credit limit, whatever that credit limit might be. If it's 2 grand, if it's 1,000, if it's just things to bridge gaps, you don't want to take out a $10,000 credit card and then wind up putting
Right.
yourself in the same position you were trying to get out of. But
Yes.
once you have that credit card, make sure you're making those timely payments. So you use it for small amounts and you pay it. Your score is going to go up significantly within 6 months of filing the bankruptcy.
Let me pause you there. There's even merit to what there's a lot of merit to what you just said, is even if you are adamantly against getting a credit card because you're like so afraid of it or whatever, even something small like $1,000 every month, um, and purposefully using it,
Right.
not using it because you need to, but paying things and buying groceries or whatever, not cash, but purposely using that and then paying it down will build your credit back up. So that's
That's
kind of like a strategy, right?
That's a strategy. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great strategy. And it's one that works. So, for folks that are coming off on the backside of bankruptcy, that's the next best step for you.
Okay. And
And
then,
pay your bills timely. That's the other one that
right.
works really well.
So before One Mission, by the way, and before Nicholas got sick, I was in the mortgage business. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that.
So, yeah, I worked for World Savings.
Oh,
Unfortunately, we were one of the papers that, the paper lenders that crashed the market, but we're not going to talk about that. So,
yeah.
anyway, but I remember looking at so many credit reports in my day, and it tells you whether or not somebody's filed bankruptcy. How long does that stay on there before it falls off?
10 years. That's what we
10
tell
years.
people, 10 years. Some people think it's 7 years, and it can be 7 years, but 10 years, it shouldn't be on there anymore. So your goal is really to stuff it, right?
Yep.
If you build up your credit, that starts to become some of the lower noise that people will ignore.
Right. So what you're saying is, so when somebody prints your credit report, if you are doing what we just suggested in terms of a strategy, you're going to have a lot of really good things on your first page, and the bankruptcy will be maybe second or third page. And
Exactly.
then again, people are going to say, "Oh, well, yeah, they filed bankruptcy, but they have, so many years now of this, maybe we should loan them a car, or whatever."
Exactly. And I know not everybody owns a home that might, be in the situation that we're talking about today. But if they do and they stay current on their mortgage, that is a good bolster for ongoing credit, or
Yep.
credit outside of the bankruptcy.
Yep. All right, cool. Those are really, really helpful tips. And then the other question I had for you is, I know this is going to sound crazy, but is it expensive to file bankruptcy? Like, how much does it cost to work with an attorney? Like, what if you don't have the money to pay your bills? How do you have money to pay for an attorney?
So you need to pay your attorney. How do you make that
Obviously.
money? But
Yeah.
bankruptcy is not as expensive as people think, right? So you get this wild vision in your mind. It's going to cost me tens of thousands of dollars to file a bankruptcy. This is awful. I'm never going to be able to do it. No,
Right.
that's actually furthest from the truth. And there are a number of fixed rate attorneys that will do it for a fixed rate. That sometimes those are oftentimes less than a couple of $1,000s. It sounds like a lot, but most of everyone gives folks payment schedules so they don't have to do it all at once.
That's good.
At one time, it was like $800 or $1,000 to file bankruptcy. Those numbers have creeped up, since the 90s. I guess that's when those were around the early 2000s. But the numbers have creeped up, but they're not exorbitant and they're not impossible to achieve, especially you just have to make sure that you've paid the attorney and all the filing fees before you actually file.
Okay.
And that you'll have plenty of time because you have pre-credit counseling that you need to do before you can actually file bankruptcy. There's a lot of homework, quite frankly, in filing a bankruptcy these days, where at one time it was not quite as much.
Okay.
And there's a lot more counseling going on now, pre-bankruptcy and post-bankruptcy. One to make sure that you're eligible to file bankruptcy and it makes sense for you, and then on the backside, what to do now.
Okay. So it's almost like I don't know. You tell me what's the percentage of people who start that process and then the attorneys say, I don't know if you actually need to file bankruptcy. How about you try this plan instead? Does that ever happen?
Um, so there's some folks that are ineligible for bankruptcy because they may lose too many assets. So they have an incredible number of assets that could cover the debt.
Yep.
And once you file bankruptcy, you don't want to rely. The trustee garners all of your assets and decides what you get to keep and what we get to sell in order to pay the creditors. So it's not a knee-jerk reaction that because you want to file bankruptcy, it's in your best interest. There'll be a decision made for you. Is it in your best interest? And you'll, in speaking with someone like that, with an attorney who's um, experienced and knows the business, they'll tell you in advance
Okay.
what's going on. So, for instance, if you had a lawsuit, so coupled with the situation that you're in incurring all this debt, you got in a car accident going on your way to the hospital, and now you're injured and you have a lawsuit with another attorney, that becomes an asset of the bankruptcy, and the trustee takes over that asset. They have the right to settle that lawsuit.
Oh,
So they don't care about anyone other than the creditors that they're protecting. So if your lawsuit was going to garner you a ton of financial gain
yeah.
to compensate you for your injuries, you could lose that or lose the benefit of it to the
Interesting.
trustee. So a lot of this needs to be evaluated, put in the pot, and decided whether this makes sense for you. And I've seen folks who don't list lawsuits. The trustees don't like that, right?
Right.
So you're trying to hide that asset, so to speak, against you from your creditors. It becomes a big problem for both the judge and the trustee, and you could lose your loss, lose the right to keep your anything from the lawsuit.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so
Wow.
there's always pitfalls in everything that you do, but in bankruptcy they're very specific, and it's um, an encompassing process.
Interesting. Yeah, it is. But it sounds like you know, it sounds like it's doable. It
Oh,
sounds like
absolutely.
you clearly wouldn't do it unless it's absolutely a requirement. Is there like a step before the bankruptcy? Like I would have thought that would have been like credit counseling, but like, say for instance, people have the money but don't know that they have the money. You know what I mean? Like there's a
Yeah.
way to get it paid. Is there? And I guess that's the big question, right? Like, should I steal from Peter to pay Paul? Or is it in my best interest to just scrap it all together? Like, is that something that you guys talk about at the beginning?
So I talk about everything. I want to get as much information from the client and have them feel comfortable giving me the information. There's no embarrassment factor here. It's just clear. We just need the information in order to decide what's going to be in your best interest.
Yep.
And part of it might be, what, we might need to, sell that asset over there and then use that asset to pay debts off at a fraction of the rate. You know, there are some benefits to that
Yeah.
because if we protect if we get rid of that one asset, then you're able to keep everything else without filing the bankruptcy.
Okay.
So,
So that is something that you would say to them.
oh,
Y-
absolutely. Yeah,
it's not like every single person who walks into your office, you go, oh, stamp,
right.
bankruptcy, right?
Exactly. So if you own a second home down the Cape and you're trying to protect that asset along with protect the assets that you have, it becomes like you're not eligible necessarily,
Right.
to
So
file a.
sometimes you may say to them, like, let's take out a second mortgage on the Cape. pay off a bunch of debt, and then down the line you can refi and get back into one mortgage. I mean, it sounds to me like you're really like a friend and a counselor to these people.
Yeah, you know, I take a pride in my clients and want to make sure that we do the best thing for them. Not necessarily, I'm still a professional. We're not necessarily their best friend and going to hang out and going to take care of their debt for them. But we also want to make sure that, that they're getting good advice that they might get from their father or from their uncle or from somebody that, they can trust.
Yeah.
If we give them advice, it's not because we're working for anyone other than them.
Right.
So it's important for them to understand it. And there are other implications to bankruptcy. Divorce is also, as you were saying at the beginning of the introduction here, that folks suffer financially and then emotionally. There's a divorce situation. If that also comes into play, that needs to be considered while you're filing your bankruptcy as well, because it will have implications on the divorce too.
Right.
There are often times that if there's going to be a divorce filed, that both parties file the divorce.
Right.
Excuse me, filed the bankruptcy. I apologize.
Right. Yeah, because you can't get blood from a
because they both would have to file the divorce, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right. That sounds great. And then I guess my last question is there? I think you're going to say yes, but tell us about like life after bankruptcy.
Yeah. So, the best stories of bankruptcies are the ones that you never hear from them again about their financial woes, and they only come for you to get their will done or a trust drafted or something great like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of success stories. And the thing about it is the success that you're going to achieve when you're on the other side of bankruptcy starts with well before filing the bankruptcy and creating your plan and creating a successful plan that you're going to achieve a clean slate.
Yeah.
The bankruptcy code and the case law talks about a fresh start and a clean slate. The idea is that you're going to be able to launch from this bankruptcy and never look behind you.
Okay.
Very rarely do we see a second bankruptcy filed by most folks. There are some folks there, we didn't get into the chapters, but there are different chapters of bankruptcy, whether it's a chapter 13 or a chapter 7. Those are two types of bankruptcies that, some folks just need relief and they can make the payments, but they need some relief. That's a chapter 13. And the chapter 7 is straight bankruptcy where all the debt gets wiped out. So those are two different topics, and they both have different analyses that you'd be looking at to determine whether someone would be successful. And to file a chapter 13 where you're paying back some of the debt, there's a lot of scrutiny that goes into that before we allow you to do that, because it's a lot of folks file the 13 and wind up filing a 7 again. That's like throwing good money after bad. So.
Bummer. Okay, great. Well, this was, I think, very helpful, and I know that our families are going to find it very helpful. It's really just answering the question of like, is this something that is right for me? And ultimately, I think what I took away from our conversation is if you're really underwater and you're questioning it, make an appointment with you or any other attorney if they're not close by, a bankruptcy attorney who has expertise in this, and let them help you to make the decision. Does that sound right?
And most of those first appointments are free. Most attorneys give a free first visit, so that consultation is important.
Okay. And do you see people out of state, or can you only work with people in Massachusetts?
So typically the license that folks have in Massachusetts just cover the bankruptcy court in Massachusetts.
Okay, good to know. All right. And tell us last but least, where can people get in touch with you?
So my law firm again is Heinlein, Beeler, Mingace and Heineman, HBMH Law. We do have a website, but my phone number is 508-626-8500 if folks need to find me there, or see Mingace at HBMH Law.
Thank you very much for doing this. I know it was very helpful. Thank you so much.
All right, Ashley, great.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I hope that today's Healing Conversations was helpful for you. And again, One Mission is here for you, and Chris is here for you, as he's already given out his phone number. Thank you very much, Chris, and goodbye, everybody.